I guess this is the show that gets me to break my January video hiatus. Make no mistake, I've been enjoying Hazbin Hotel, but the intro narration bothered me, and then it got worse. So let's explore why. And this is not me trying to say that everything I'm about to discuss is a sign of objectively bad writing or something like that. Some of it is good, some of it is bad. This is just how I feel about it. I think it's important to make that clear now. Something doesn't have to be badly written to bother you. Sympathy for the devil is not a new concept. I was raised in a Christian household. I once read the Bible out of boredom in boarding school. I once slept through most of a week-long Bible studies class and still got the award for best student. I tell you this 10% because that last part is one of my most amusing memories, and 90% to make sure you understand that I know what I'm talking about when I say that the devil is kind of boring. Sure, there are a lot of interesting thematic breakdowns you can make with him, and the book of Revelations predicts some insane moments and epic battles, but the supernatural echelon of the Bible presents challenges if you want to adapt them as characters. I mean, you can do it, but the Prince of Darkness is not the first thing people think of when considering complex, multifaceted characters. He usually works best as a force of nature influencing people. It's a lot easier to do this with other mythologies with more, flawed gods. So people make changes. I'm told Paradise Lost is the quintessential example of this, but I barely remember the overly sarcastic production summary of that book I'm never gonna read. From my observations of modern day media though, when people want to make Lucifer more complicated than pure evil, there are two aspects people use. One, the free will question and what Lucifer's role in humanity's evil actually is. And two, family. After all, God is the father of everything, even him. And daddy issues is just such a rich well of character conflict to draw from, as I'm sure Vivzy Pop herself will tell you. There's a third aspect, but that applies to basically all the heavenly beings, and that's giving them just a lot of human emotions. And to properly contextualize my feelings, I will be using another TV show I enjoy despite its flaws. Lucifer, the story of what happens after the devil quit being the warden of hell. Spoilers for several important plot points in that story, by the way. In Lucifer, tired of millennia of being the king of hell, goes on holiday. Then he quits. And then he becomes a police procedural with a focus on Lucifer's relationship with evil. In the show, Lucifer hates his reputation because he never makes anyone do anything. The devil made me do it is just an excuse people use to assuage their guilt and what they've done with their free will. This is contrasted with Lucifer's own feelings of lacking free will whenever his father is involved. Honestly, the show deserves its own video, or 3. Now, 2 things to note. 1. This isn't really a fair comparison. Lucifer has had much more time to explore many more themes. In fact, the idea of redeeming sinners is just one of its thematic aspects brought up in season 5 as a result of a running gag becoming a character arc. I could probably watch the pilot and first season of Hazbin, and the only reason it would take more time than watching the first 6 episodes of Lucifer depends entirely on how much I choose to rewatch the songs. 2. Lucifer isn't the main character of Hazbin, and that's definitely a factor. In fact, there are aspects of live action Lucifer that I can see in Charlie that reflect this. With that in mind, let's begin. I think the reason Lucifer's backstory in episode 1, literally titled The Story of Hell, bothered me so much is because it's kind of vanilla. When I watch Lucifer, the show, and his relationship with the other angels and humanity and everything in between, it's not biblically accurate, but I can tell the writers wanted to create a more complex look into the story we think we know. But Hazbin's Lucifer's backstory feels like someone read the Bible and thought, okay, but what if Lucifer was just a sad boy who only just wanted to give us free will and was punished for it? And it feels, like he's just a diet safe for work devil. And honestly, I don't think the safe for work devil really fits in this show that well. Not helped that he was apparently so dejected at his punishment of being surrounded by the worst results of his decisions that Lilith took charge of empowering hell. It reminds me of the Hell of a Boss discourse about how it totally makes sense that the sins of gluttony and lust encourage moderation and consent, at which point I have to ask, why are you even here? You don't punish people for sinning, but you don't encourage them to indulge in your sin? Are you just here to be characters in this show? Because you're good at that, but an overlord should not feel like a better representation of sin than someone who is literally called a sin. Especially put next to greed, who is played a lot straighter because capitalism bad, I guess. But that brings me to the structure of this hell and where I think it's great and where I think it falls short. Let's look back at live action Lucifer, who would be more accurately described as a warden than a king. People go to hell because they are dragged down by their guilt and put in a hell loop, torturing them with their sins. This matches Lucifer being a punisher, not encourager of evil. Now in Hazbin, I actually love the idea that for the more give humanity free will oriented Lucifer, his punishment is that he must be surrounded by the worst results of his decision. That's just impeccable. Though I guess that means he can't even look at Earth, or he'd be able to see, something other than that. It honestly matches a lot more with how hell is technically also Lucifer's prison, despite his reputation as king. But this kind of feeds into his powerlessness, because even though he's the king of hell, the current state of hell is evidently something he does not like, but he's just powerless to change it. And that's made even worse by the fact that hell doesn't really punish sinners in this show. I mean, the show claims it does, but from everything we've seen so far, the sinners are the ones making their lives hell, and not in a hell as other people type way. Like, the moment sinners are able to live above hellborn imps and hellhounds in the social caste system, I'm like, this isn't really hell anymore. This is just a hell-flavored country with a bunch of annoying immigrants that another country shows up to murder once in a while. Especially with the revelation that hellborns are excluded from extermination. The thing portrayed as a real threat to sinners are the overlords, who, as far as I can tell, are all just other sinners that have somehow managed to gain power in hell. Angel isn't a slave to Asmodeus, he's a slave to Valentino. Husk's gambling didn't put him on Mammon's bad side, it put him beneath the radio demon. How am I supposed to take Alastor talking about how hell is supposed to be the final punishment for sinners seriously when he and his mates are practically thriving? Especially because I suspect that their power comes from the fact that when they were alive, they were just the worst of the lot. Please at least tell me that sins can take control of human souls, at the very least. The only part of hell that actually punishes sinners is the extermination, which is explicitly the one thing the show is about stopping. Other than that, it's just people being assholes to each other, but they've added magic. And like, how special are the executions really, considering the sinners just do such a bang up job of killing themselves? Maybe it's just because I've watched a lot of Helverbuzz, but I feel like the Hellborn rulers are too busy with Hellborn peasants to even consider sinners as a factor. It's like there are two separate caste systems in the show that don't really get to interact that much. And maybe that's it. I've seen Lucifer be the guy who encourages evil. I've seen him be the guy who punishes evil. I've even seen him just be another prisoner who also gets tortured. But I've never seen him be such a non-entity. I mean, he's still a prisoner, but in a hell that doesn't really punish anyone, where his biggest enemy is depression and his inability to talk to his daughter, I don't think that means very much. And that's not helped by how no one respects Charlie. Which might be more of a her thing because people know she's nice, but people respect and are more scared of other sinners, not even the overlords, just regular sinners, than they are of the devil's daughter.
You might be some royal big shot, but that doesn't mean shit to me. I'm too rich and too influential to give a flying fuck about what some tuck-swearing demon princess wants to advertise. So don't get cute with me, honey, or I will fucking bury you.
Am I wrong for saying I don't think someone who is in hell, explicitly to be punished for all eternity, should be able to say that to anyone ever? Like, what is Lucifer's stance on all the havoc Helverbuzz characters wreak on Earth? Does he endorse it? Or is he just powerless to stop it so we can continue to think of his relationship with Charlie without considering all the bad things that happen because of his kingdom, as he continues to be the safe for work devil? This show's very premise changes heavily if the sinners are being tortured instead of being allowed to continue to be terrible on their own time, but Lucifer can't encourage them in any way, or we'll have to look at him and the very way hell is structured in relation to heaven in a completely different light. And considering Lucifer himself is the sin of pride, I guess I could say that this just generally extends to most of the sins. They aren't really encouraging evil in others or punishing them, and it feels like a middle ground that exists because the show wants us to like the characters, but doesn't want us to look at them as, being sin. There'd be a lot less people talking about how cute they are otherwise. Like, I like Asmodeus, and I even like his relationship with Fizz. I just don't like him as the head honcho of Lost. I mean, he respects consent, right? How would he interact with Valentino? Worst case scenario, the sin of Lost being horrified by human soul's sexual deviancy. And maybe I'm just not that into the idea that hell is just, well, another place. Like, you would not have to change that much to just completely remove sinners from Hell of a Boss. Change the business from murdering humans to something else and it just becomes a story set in a very weird looking alien world. Also, I'm not vibing with the whole heaven is the real bad guy and most of the rulers of hell are actually great thing. Wait, this is just Ruby Gilman again. Like, to bring the Lucifer TV show up one more time, heaven was not perfect there. Frankly, the audience was rooting against them most of the time. A character literally tells God to his face that he's a terrible dad. But Lucifer was also very flawed, which allowed him to be as interesting as Charlie keeps threatening to become. Having watched this show, I can hardly imagine that much will change by the end. The main characters may become better people, but I doubt that'll involve going to heaven. And I furthermore doubt they're going to reform all the sinners and make hell less of a violent circus. And heaven itself does not help. I'm able to get around how effed up hell is by going, well, if you take all the worst people, put them together and tell them they are together because they are the worst, that'll only encourage more bad behavior. But then Adam exists and he's, well, to use his own words, a dick. Because as the first man on the show's introduction to heaven, all I can think is, okay, heaven isn't as great as it thinks it is and is pretty hypocritical. Could you be less obvious about it? I get that this is meant to just show the hypocrisy and, well, given how little time the show actually has, maybe they don't have time for that much more subtlety. But yeah, Adam can swear all he wants and no one bats an eye, but Charlie doing so is seen as a bad thing. The hypocrisy is all right there on the wall for everyone to see. Which is why I just find it so strange that it apparently takes so many people so much time to see. Are they all really that blind? Well, I guess they're all just that blind. Also, like, what's the state of free will in this show? The tree of knowledge of good and evil still exists and is credited with humans having free will and the ability to, sin. But Lilith was free enough to leave Adam and Adam was free enough to demand control over her. Sounds pretty free will to me. I highly doubt the show is gonna say that Adam is a misogynistic piece of shit because of Lucifer, and I equally highly doubt that the show is gonna try to make it seem like Adam being a misogynistic piece of shit has no correlation with any sin. Though wouldn't that be an interesting take? And the weird thing about this video is, I'm 2,000 words deep, and I'm honestly not sure I'd want this show to change that much in response to this. I mean, I think I've made it clear that there are certain aspects of the writing I think could be improved, but if you want to tell the story of how the safe for work devil got cast out of the totalitarian self-righteous heaven who don't even understand their own rules, go for it. More power to you. I reiterate, I am mostly enjoying the show. Who am I to stifle such a premise? It's not even the weirdest thing I've watched this year. I do wish it had more episodes though. When did we all agree that 8 should be what we consider the standard length of a season exactly, and why? These are just my thoughts on the premise and an analysis on how maintaining that premise affects the world building and characterization, and why I feel like I can like so many of these characters as characters but still feel off about them in the scope of the greater world. I guess this is an appropriate show for me to have such complicated feelings about than just good or bad, even though I'm pretty sure my next video on this show is going to be mostly positive unless something happens in the finale. Tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and while you're down there, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more content. Thank you and good day.